Welcome to the second Sanguine Savoury stream. This one is the Simple Comfort Season Ender. And in order to do a proper Simple Comforts feast, I decided to go for what was always kind of a special occasion meal for my family, only done up even more than it was normally. So tonight's meal is going to be a steak with mashed potatoes, corn, Caesar salad, sauteed snap peas, which I'm going to do up in the pan right after the steak comes out and while it's resting, and an apple crumble. And joining me at the moment is Kara,
I'll be right back.
who will be right back apparently. So not really joining me at the moment, but joining me in a few moments. And Della Hayes.
Yo and hello.
How are you doing tonight, Della?
Not so bad. My day's off now, so can't complain.
Fantastic. So let me just quickly grab my little pie plate I forgot to grab, and I will start on the apple crumble. Now, if you're making this meal for yourself and not trying to do it in an efficient manner for stream, this would be done after everything else because you don't need your dessert done at the exact same time that everything else will be done, or at about the same time. But due to stream time constraints and the fact I don't think you guys want to see me eat my entire dinner and then start working on an apple crumble, I'm going to start it now.
That's pretty reasonable.
So, right now, I just noticed someone else is saying that they're interested in being on, so let me quickly fix that. Oh, wait, never mind. They were saying it to something else, I think. Okay, yeah, they were saying it to something else. My mistake. So, it's going to start with some Granny Smith apples. In order to make breaking the Granny Smith apples down a bit easier, I have a handy little apple slicer thing that I'm going to use. This at once slices the apples and mostly cores it. Every now and then you need to go back through and just touch it up a little bit because it won't get quite the entire core out all the time. So there's one, and this will require 2 to 3 Granny Smith apples. I'm probably going to use 3 just to be on the safe side and make sure that I have enough filling. So let me grab my third one. Actually, let me move this bowl out of the way because I'm going to use a different one for this. So there's my apples all nicely sliced up in a few moments. You can get one of these or you can just do it all by hand. Either way works beautifully. I have one, so I figured why not use it and just get it done a little bit quicker than I would otherwise. Let me grab the other bowl. So at the very least, start off using this bowl. Going to separate my apples, and I'm just kind of feeling the center as I do so to make sure that I got the core out without any issue. because you can easily feel a texture difference when the core is still there. Okay, and now then, one problem with apples is that once they get sliced, they'll start trying to oxidize on you. No one likes when their apples go brown. So, the easiest way to deal with that is with some acid. I'm just using a bit of lemon juice. And I'll be using more citrus in this recipe as well. Just hitting it with that. That way I have the apples coated up. And let me just mix it around, make sure that they get a good contact with the citric acid. Trying to do this without spilling the apples out of the bowl. There we go. So, got them coated with some lemon juice. That'll keep them from oxidizing, which, like I said, does not look appealing when you end up having it oxidized. So this is really a personal choice matter in the next step. You can either decide that you want to peel your apples entirely, or you can decide if you want to keep the skin on. With the skin on, it can be a bit of a weird texture if you don't like it. Once the dish is done, but if you do like it, it's amazing. I'm going to leave the skin on today. So I have my apples in that. So now I just need to add the rest of the seasoning to these apples. And the rest of the seasoning is going to be a fair bit of granulated sugar. It's going to be about a quarter cup of granulated sugar. About a half teaspoon of grated lemon zest. I already threw on some lemon juice. And about a quarter teaspoon of ground cinnamon. So let me grab a larger bowl because it'll make tossing this around a fair bit easier. Okay. So there's a good size bowl. Shift these over now that they've been coated in lemon juice. You guys are being awfully quiet tonight.
Oh, sorry. I was shilling the stream, and I invited one of the mods from a different server I'm in to watch the stream. So if you're watching,
nice.
Mr. Death, say hi. We don't bite.
Yeah, I too was showing the stream across Discord and on the Twitter.
Oh, thank you very much.
Of course.
Yes.
So as I said, a quarter cup of granulated sugar is just going to go right in on top of all the apples. And again, this is one of the situations where you will actually see me measure some stuff out, because this is not a recipe that I've made up. This is a recipe that I was given. So in order to do it the same way it was done when I was growing up, I'm actually following a recipe.
Nice. Yay, Mr. Death's in chat.
Which,
Be nice. He's a mod.
those who are used to seeing my cooking videos will know it's kind of strange actually watching me measure stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally it's, and you add about this much. You'll get some of that as well once we get to the steak, but while we're in the crumble, I'll actually be measuring. And same with the Caesar salad, because that is also not my recipe originally.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to add the 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. And where did I set my cinnamon? I grabbed it 2 seconds ago. There it is. Nope, that's not the cinnamon. Where the hell did I set it? Oh, there. I'm blind. It is one of the biggest containers right next to me.
That happens sometimes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, 1/4 teaspoon goes straight in. And then I need to get some fresh lemon zest. There's a bunch of different kitchen tools that you can use to do this. The one that I'm going to be using tonight is my handy little microplane here. I like this one because it even has a collection on the back and tells you how much you're collecting. So it goes in tablespoons on one side and milliliters on the other.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you're zesting, you want to make sure that you don't get the pith of whatever you're zesting. The pith is that white, spongy layer of the skin. So when I'm doing this, you can see there's the nice, shiny yellow. And then as I go through it, you get to a dimmer yellow, and then beneath the dimmer yellow is just white. That white is the pith, and that white is extremely bitter. So when you're zesting, you just want to take that nice oil-rich, shiny layer and not get the bitter white layer underneath.
Okay.
So I'm just going around and checking how much zest I have thus far. So I'm at about 2/3 of a tablespoon, and I need 1 tablespoon. So, have either of you ever had crumble, or do you go more for apple pie?
I don't know if I have crumble. Like, probably the closest thing would be like a coffee cake crumble.
Okay.
If I had any crumble before.
With apple crumble, sometimes it's also called apple crisp. The way that it ends up being is it's kind of like an apple pie, only instead of having pie crust, be its outermost layer, you have a combination of sugar and oat and butter forming a nice crispy outer layer for your apple treat. So once all that stuff's in, you just want to toss it around, make sure that all your apples get coated in the zest and the cinnamon and the sugar. You don't want one apple having all of the cinnamon. You don't want one apple having more sugar than any other, or having all the zest.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, that one apple would be insanely flavorful, and the rest would be rather boring.
Or you can have all the apples be flavorful, and then there be that one apple that's bland.
Yeah, which is also bad. So you really want to give it a good mix up. That looks good. Let me wipe my hand clean, because now it's covered in cinnamony, lemony, appley juice and a lot of sugar. Let me rinse it that way it doesn't get sticky. There we go. And just wipe off on my apron. So, that's pretty much the inside of the crumble.
Nice.
Really easy, really delicious. And it's the same as you would do for an apple pie.
Mm-hmm.
Then for the crumble, which will be the next part, let me shift this one down and away and grab another bowl, which we'll use this one for the crumble. Into this one is going to go oats. So you want to use, sometimes they're called old-fashioned oats, sometimes they're called rolled oats, sometimes quick cook oats. Depends on where you are, what exactly they're called. So I have a bag of rolled oats that I just bought earlier today. And into this bowl, I'm going to be throwing a quarter cup of the old-fashioned rolled oats. Then I need a quarter cup of all-purpose flour. Whatever brand of all-purpose flour you like most, use that. I'm rather partial towards King Arthur flour. I use it in a lot of my baking. Does wonders for me. And grab down my sack of King Arthur flour. And pop this in. So this will also be a quarter cup of all-purpose flour. Put that in there. Then it'll be another quarter cup of granulated sugar. Let me get my flour set down. Get this wiped out on my apron. So in goes quarter cup of granulated sugar. And then you want an eighth of a cup of brown sugar. The brown sugar that I'm using is going to be a light brown sugar. If you want an even more molassesy flavor, go for a dark brown sugar or a golden brown sugar. But I find that light brown sugar has a bit more utility than dark brown.
Mm-hmm.
So I just got light sugar because it will be easier to go through.
Nice.
So let me get the bag of, oops, there went the salt. So like I said, you want about an eighth of a cup. So about half your quarter cup, or if you have an eighth cup measure, use the eighth cup measure. And then you want a quarter of a teaspoon of cinnamon again. So let me get that back out. And then you want a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. This I'm just going to eyeball, and I'm just going to use some pink Himalayan. And then a third of a stick of unsalted butter diced up, and you want it at about room temperature. So let me grab my butter. And I'm just going to kind of chunk it up as I go.
Nice.
Go. Sometimes it does not want to come off the knife.
Rip.
There we go. Big chunk just fell down. That up and toss that out. So, Della, have you ever had an apple crumble or apple crisp?
No, unfortunately I don't. I'm not a big fan of those. I love pie, but when it comes to apple pie, it's just not my flavor.
Ah. Have you had any type of crumble or crisp?
Probably when I was a kid.
For some reason, they're one of the dishes that seems more common in Commonwealth areas than in the United States. In the United States, they do a lot more pies.
I made the apple crumble back at the last place I worked at, but I never ate any of it.
Ah. So, this you want to all incorporate, so I'm just going to quickly toss it, and then I'm going to grab a large spoon. Well, in this case, more of a spatula, and I'm just going to work this round. And what you want to do is you don't want it really clumped up, but you want nice, large, crumbly texture to it. Because this, as I said earlier, is going to form the top layer where a pie crust would be in a pie. Is just going to be little broken up bits of crumble.
That's why it's called an apple crumble.
Yep. Because you just have this crumbly, delicious topping. And I'm going to get my hands in just to kind of pinch and break it up a bit more. Because, yeah, you want a nice crumbly topping to it. So you can see how it's starting to come together as a crumbly texture rather than just the flour and the oats and the cinnamon sugar individually or just mixed together randomly. You're getting more of a textured top as this goes. And that's exactly what you want. So it should start forming these kind of clumps. And you want them decently sized. You don't want them enormous, but enough to give a good amount of texture. So that looks good. Let me, again, wipe off my hand. And for this, you'll want an oven that's preheated to 350 degrees. I've already preheated my oven. And at this point, all I need to do is I need to butter my little pie dish. Then I'll layer in the apples and toss the crumble on top. But at this point, I can kind of let this sit for a little bit because the apples won't go since I threw on some lemon juice. And the crumble is perfectly fine to just sit out and nothing bad will happen to it. I'll be coming back to this here in a moment after I butter this dish up. But you guys don't need to see me butter a dish, I don't think, so.
Nope.
That doesn't seem like it would be beyond anyone, right?
I don't think so. It seems pretty straightforward to butter a dish.
Good butter spreading right now.
Say again?
I bet I'm missing out on some good buttering right now.
Well, if you really want to see it, all you do.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would love to watch the technique in which you spread it around and all that jazz.
You just get a little bit of something. I'm just using a paper towel that I covered with some butter. And you just kind of smear it around, or you can just grab a butter stick in the wrap and still do it that way. Or if you want to get messy, you can just stick your hands in it and spread it around like a filthy animal.
Yeah, filthy animal.
So that's pretty much what I need to do for the apple crumble. Like I said, I'm going to add in the apples and then coat, which you'll see me do here in a little bit. But I've spent a lot of time on the apple crumble. And I mentioned I'm going to do a mashed potato. Mashed potato can take a fair bit of time. I've already done some of the prep work ahead of time. So I've sliced up my potatoes and slit the skin a bit so it breaks up. Which, by the way, this is a cooking trick that I picked up from watching another cooking channel. If the useless cook is out there, yes, I'm stealing your technique. And there's nothing you can do about it. But it was such a good trick that I decided to take it. Now, let me move off into the kitchen. And here in the kitchen, you see a common view, my cast iron pot, and behind that you see just one of the other skillets that I have, which the water has been salted, but it's currently cool water. That's because, as I've said many times before, if it grows in the ground, you bring up to a boil. If it's above the ground, then you put into a boil. Potatoes are, of course, grown in the ground. So you want to put them into, at the very least, cool water, if not cold water. So I'm just going to be throwing these in, and the water is fairly heavily salted because salting your water is one of the main points where you can actually get salt into the potatoes. I will still be salting the mash later on, but this just allows for more flavor into the potatoes. I'm using a waxy potato this time. In the last episode where I did mash, which I think was my cottage pie episode, if I'm not mistaken, I used a floury potato. Do either of you happen to know the difference between a waxy potato and a floury potato?
No.
Kara?
I didn't hear the question. What was the question?
Do you happen to know the difference between a waxy potato and a floury potato?
No.
So, the most common floury potato that you can find is a russet. Just a standard russet.
Mm-hmm.
Has kind of that floury texture on the outside. where it doesn't really have a shiny look to it. It is just a standard floury potato. There's really no other way of describing it other than it has kind of a floury, almost dusty feel to its skin. Then you have waxy potatoes. Yukon Gold is an example of a waxy potato because its skin has a waxiness to feel. There's really no other way to describe it either. And waxy potatoes tend to have thinner skins than floury potatoes. So you will more often see skin-on mash or skin-on fries with a waxy potato than you will with a floury potato. You can do skin-on fries with russets, but most of the time it's going to be a Yukon Gold, or you're going to do roast potatoes with the skins on of waxy reds or something like that. So now I have the potatoes in, so that'll be good to go. All I did was I flipped that burner to high, and the water will start boiling before terribly long. So now I have this pie dish that I set up earlier. All you do with this is you start throwing your apples in until your dish is pretty much full. And I can probably fit 3 more apple slices without any issue. So, in they go. And then, like I said, rather than doing a pie crust, you use your crumble mixture. So you just kind of
nice.
toss that on. And you want to get a decent covering of it. It doesn't have to be perfect. The nature of the crumble makes it so it is very rarely a perfect cover.
Mm-hmm.
But you get a nice enough covering to make it look really pretty when it comes out. So
Nice.
there you go. Covered over. Looks beautiful. As I said, this will all be going into a 350-degree oven. And I already have my ear of corn roasting in the oven because, again, just like the potatoes can take some time, corn can take a really long time. You can do it a bunch of different ways. My family would often boil the corn, or we would roast it. I'm doing a roasted corn that I'm then going to end up finishing in the same pan that I do the steak in and that I do the snap peas in, so it gets a nice bit of char on the outside. So, now then, crumble is completely assembled. This is going to go into that 350-degree oven for about 30 minutes. So let me go toss it in there, and I will join you guys in the kitchen again. Oh, before I do that, actually, let me give you guys a bit of a choice. I've used Mountain smoked sea salt a lot for my cooking videos. I'm going to use a different salt because I always recommend people try something new. Now, these won't be new salts for me, sadly, but they will be new salts seen in the videos for the most part. What type of salt do you guys want me to use on my steak tonight? Do you want me to use a Salzburg Berg salt? Do you want me to use a African pearl salt? So Salzburg salt is this salt right here. It's kind of an irregular coloration because the exact chemical composition of each grain is rather different. African pearl salt is rather weird to look at. Let me put it on the cutting board. It will probably be the easiest to see there. It's actually these like river rock smooth little drops or pearls of salt. Looks kind of interesting and kind of weird. Or do you want me to use my pink Himalaya, which is rather pink, but also delicious?
African pearl.
African pearl.
Okay, so let me just pop my steak out of the bag that I have it in. I've allowed my steak to come up to about room temperature, because you always want to start with about room temperature meat when you're going to be cooking it. Makes it so it's easier to judge how long it's been cooking, how done it is. Whereas if you start with cold, then you can end up with the outside getting beautifully done and the inside being far too uncooked for your taste. Or you can end up with the outside being ridiculously overdone, while the inside is just about how you want it.
Yikes.
Yeah, it makes it a pain in the ass to cook your meat properly if you don't let it come up to the proper temp. But if you let it come up to about room temp, then it is really easy to judge. So I just patted dry the steak tonight. I'm using a absolutely beautiful strip steak. And you guys said African pearl. So when it comes to steak, you always want to salt it just before you start cooking it. You don't want to salt it too far ahead of time, because if you salt it too far ahead of time, then I've talked about Maillard reactions a lot before. The Maillard reactions don't go off as beautifully. And you suck out a lot more moisture from your steak than if you salt it.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yes. You want it nice and juicy. You want the salt on right before, so you get all those beautiful Maillard reactions. You get increased flavor in your meat. And you don't end up drying it out any or causing any other problems. So I'm just going to sprinkle a fair bit of the African pearl onto this bit of meat. And then this is going to go straight into my kitchen and straight into the pan. Just a little bit more up here. And that looks good. So I have a good coverage of salt. You can't quite see all of it because it goes fairly translucent once it hits meat, with the exception of the really big pieces. And that's just because it's starting to suck up moisture. And the more time that you give it, the smaller the crystals get, the harder they get to see, because they're sucking up more moisture and just kind of dispersing onto and into the meat. But let's go off to the kitchen again. So let me click over to this view.
Ooh, the potatoes look good.
Yep, the potatoes are starting to go nicely. So my cast iron skillet has, of course, been preheating this entire time. And can you guys hear that sizzle?
Barely.
I heard it.
It's a shame because it is sizzling absolutely beautifully. So, as I've mentioned in pretty much every other video where I talk about cooking meat, when you want it to get a good sear, you want to set it down and you want to leave it the fuck alone. Just let it sit there, let it cook up. Don't continue dicking around with it, because the more that you pick it up and move it, first off, the more juice that you squeeze out of it. Second off, the harder time it has actually getting a good crust. But if you just put it in and you leave it be, then it gets this absolutely beautiful, deep, brown, delicious sear on it. So let me wipe off my cutting board. And I will, instead of clicking entirely away from that, I'll keep that in the small view so you guys can see that go while the desk is brought back up.
Ooh, fancy.
Yes, very. So now you guys have seen the crumble. That's all good to go. As I've said, the snap peas, the sugar snap peas, sweet peas, however it's called in your area, will be done when the steak comes out of the pan and while the steak's resting. I'll toss those in, saute them up, get a nice char on them, throw some salt on, make sure that they have a good amount of flavor. I also mentioned that I had the corn in, and you can see the potatoes are on the burner, and they're coming up to temperature. I mentioned that I was going to make a Caesar salad, and nothing's been done on that quite yet. So let's change that. This is going to be a Caesar salad from scratch.
Nice.
So this is the Caesar salad dressing recipe that my mother uses and that I learned from her. This is again going to be measured because I learned it from someone else, and I have the recipe from them, so I might as well actually follow it for a change.
Mm-hmm.
So let me get a bowl,
Mm-hmm.
get garlic that I need. And again, I've mentioned before, you can either do the garlic entirely fresh, or you can cheat. Cheating in this case is not all that bad because the minced garlic pots that you can find in grocery stores are still really damn good. So if you want to save some time, get a garlic pot. It won't harm the quality of the dish. It'll still taste amazing. Then there's going to be something that some people might not like, but it really does wonders for the flavor, and that's anchovy. I'm just going to be using some anchovy paste today. You can use fresh anchovies if you want. It's really up to you. If you are using fresh anchovies, then you'll get the anchovies, you'll mash them up into paste. So I'm just skipping the middle man and going straight to paste. Then I'll also need some Worcestershire. Don't mind me, I'm just knocking everything over.
Woohoo! Loud noises.
Loud noises, 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 loud, loud noises.
So you'll need some Worcestershire, which I have right here. You'll need mustard, and you can use a bunch of different options for this. You can do a dry mustard if you want. I don't like doing dry mustard as often. I'll use an actual already made mustard. And this is where you have a lot of options because you can use pretty much any type of mustard that you want. Let me just grab a couple options and I'll do a bit of audience participation again. And let you guys decide which mustard you want me to use tonight. I have a spicy brown. In fact, I have two different types of spicy brown. I have a harvest coarse ground. And let me grab one more mustard for another option. Let's see, I'll go with a stone ground.
Wow. Jack
So,
Gunsy's yelling in chat for stone ground.
stone ground?
Well,
Yeah, he put it in there twice.
well, then I think we should not do that because that is bad behavior, and bad behavior is to be punished, not rewarded.
I don't know. It is audience participation, so shouldn't we give the audience
Yes,
what they want?
audience participation, but that does not give them the right to act like children. If they want to act like children, they can come on here with us.
Well, I have final say, so I'm going to go for the stone ground full strength mustard, which this one is just an Engelhofer.
Good idea. I'm glad you thought of that.
Stone ground.
Oh my goodness.
Not what your mom said, Jack. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. That might have been too far. I don't know you that well.
Apparently, you are a bitch-ass punk.
Punk ass bitch, but that's why I said that's not what your
No,
mom
look underneath that.
I'm sorry, I'm on the StreamYard page. It takes a little longer for the live chat to pop up than it does on the YouTube page.
I'm on the. I have both pulled up and woo.
Spicy.
You're now pig's anus.
I look like a
Why
pig's
you-
anus. Best pig's anus you've ever seen.
Oh my goodness, guys.
To be fair, how many pig's anuses do you really look at in a day?
To be fair, I don't want to know how many pig's anuses Jack looks at it in a day.
Fair
Same.
enough. And I see Chaos Eve is in chat. Chaos, you do have a link to join us in the actual stream if you want.
Yes, Jack, and now Chaos is finishing it.
So I'll need one egg. Let me grab a whisk while I'm at it. Then salt, and if you like pepper, throw in pepper. I hate pepper. I don't know why I hate pepper. I've just always hated pepper, so I don't use pepper.
Don't blame you.
Though my mother, when she made this, would use pepper because she'd just mix this up for the entire family. And we would have it with all of the various ingredients that she throws in. Let's see. Oh, there's my juice. So, you're also going to use a lemon. You can squeeze it by hand. I often do, but I also have a little lemon squeezer, so might as well use the gouge while I have the gouge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I forgot one important thing, which is this wouldn't be much of a salad dressing without some type of vinegar in it. So, vinegar. The way that you make this is you start off with 3 tablespoons of vinegar. Oh, whoops. It would help if I remember to pull the tab top out of the vinegar before I start trying to pour it. So There we go. I'm just using a red wine, as I said. 1, 2, and by the way, the smell of the steak is taunting me. 3, because goddamn, that smells amazing, and it smells like I'm going to have to turn it here in a moment. So I might interrupt my Caesar salad dressing making by going and flipping the steak.
No.
Yep. So there's the red wine vinegar. I need to slice my lemon. So before I cut into lemon, one thing that I always do is I roll the lemon, just kind of squeezing it as I do it. Frees up more of the juice on the inside and also gets more of the oils going. So it smells amazing. So you squeeze it or you roll it and kind of squeeze it as you're rolling it until it becomes fairly easy to just squeeze by hand. And then you cut it and into the little handy dandy lemon squeezer. One half of the lemon into that, and let's throw the other half. There's the other half. And yes, I am going to have to turn that steak, so let me redirect my camera so that you can see the steak entirely. And did I grab my tongs out? I'll grab my tongs out. Grab this out. So, as I've mentioned before, you don't want to fight with your meat when you're trying to turn it. At the most, you just want to gently coax it. If you try to pull it off, oh, look at how beautifully deep brown that is. Now, one important thing before that, I mentioned that you salt right before it hits the heat. And then I forgot to salt it right before it hits the heat. Let me just throw some salt on. There we go. Now I'll flip that again.
But
The fat on it is a nice deep golden brown. All that meat is beautifully seared. One part looks like it's just before it would start burning, which is a little bit darker than I'd normally go for, but I was distracted making Caesar salad dressing. But it's still good. It isn't burnt. It just looks delicious right now. So let me go back to this view so that we can pick up the Caesar salad dressing where I left off. Now then, you add a couple drops of Worcestershire. That should be good. You'll want, if you're using fillets, then you'll do about 5 fillets of anchovy that you'll then mash into a paste. As I said, I'm not using fillets, I'm using paste. So you'll want probably about that much paste, which is I'd say about a eighth. No, probably about a eighth of a no half of a teaspoon. Eighth would be too small for that. Then you'll want, if you're using dry mustard, you'll do about a quarter of a teaspoon. Since I'm using actual mustard, I'm going to step it up a little bit because dry mustard will be more concentrated than mustard with some vinegar and horseradish and other ingredients in it. So I'm going to do a full half of a teaspoon. Then we'll of course need garlic. And the recipe says half of a teaspoon of garlic, which you can do half, you can do a bit more. Either way works. I tend to err on the side of more, so I'm going to do that and just a bit extra because I like garlic. You can never have too much garlic in my mind. And to that effect, I'm also going to add in a touch of black garlic.
Nice.
Man, that steak is taunting me. That smell.
I bet it smells good.
It smells absolutely amazing. And that sizzle is really loud in here right now. So, now then, that's most of the ingredients in this. As I said, you'll have to use 1 egg. This dressing does not have a very long shelf life because this egg is going in raw. So, when you make this dressing, you want to use this dressing. And you don't want to really try to use this a day after you make it. You want to use it that day or throw it out. And then this, of course, needs oil as well. Because, again, it's not much of a salad dressing. It doesn't have oil, is it?
Nice.
So into this is going to go about twice the amount, or exactly twice the amount of vinegar. So we put in 3 of vinegar. So that's 3 of oil. 4, 5, 6. There we go. And where did I put the oil lid? I just had the oil lid. That's probably the most annoying thing about cooking, when you set down the lid for something and then you immediately launch into a game of, where the hell did I put that?
Yeah. Or, is this the right lid?
Yep, because I am currently losing the game of where the hell did I put that. I'm just going to, oh, there's the lid.
Woo! You found it.
I found it immediately after deciding that, you know what, I'm not going to find it, so I put the oil on the other side of the room in the kitchen. So now you just whisk up this dressing.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh yeah, we need salt, which I forgot to add. The salt is to taste, but remember, whenever you're talking a dressing, you want the dressing a bit too vinegary, a bit too salty, a bit too flavorful in every respect. Because when you're talking dressing, you don't eat it by itself, you eat it on something. That's perfect right now. Okay, sounds like the steak is good for another turn. want to get all the sides of your steak. So this one has the top and bottom, of course. It has a nice fat cap on either end as well. So you want to make sure that you hit the fat cap. And Kara, is that you with the background noise?
I don't know.
Sounds like you went into a wind tunnel for a moment.
Oh, it might be my AC. I have my the AC unit in my room tilted toward me because it's like almost 100 degrees out down here in Florida.
True. It seems to go down when you speak, so just make sure that you say something every now and then. That way it doesn't.
Okay, I'll try to do that. But yeah,
Wind tunnel for everyone.
I'm sorry about that. But yeah,
Not a problem. I'm not going to tell you to turn off your AC or anything like that. Trust me. I love the fucking AC. I love the cold, so mine's cranked as well. It's just really far away from me right now.
oh yeah. And I did have my phone near the AC unit, but I did have it muted because my phone did get overheated at one point. But I had my phone muted the whole time, so we were good.
And let me quickly do a couple things because I noticed some people are asking to be on. Let me let Adam know that I'm still live. And let me post this to Jack so that he can join us because he's asking to be on.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
he probably only wants to be on so he can cuss me out for talking to him like that. Which, fair enough.
That'll be another source of entertainment besides just watching me go.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay, and that I'm just going to give a couple moments of that to get that nice golden brown on that fat cat. Out the steak comes. And the steak will now rest. Let me flip the camera view so that you guys can see the steak now sitting on my desk.
Hello.
Welcome, Jack.
So there's the steak in the bottom corner,
Hey, Kara.
looking absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Excellent.
And as I said, I'm going to do the snap peas in the same pan
Ooh, nice sizzle.
as that steak.
That was a nice sizzle.
Yep.
You know what I had for supper tonight was
What did you have?
ratatouille.
Ah,
Nice.
And there was a second word that I can't remember nor pronounce. So, but needless to, it had this ciabatta bread that was like fried or something, or no, it was grilled. Everything was grilled. And
Bye, Mr. Death. Thank you for showing up, dude. You're my favorite mod in that server.
Yeah, but it was delicious. It had the ciabatta bread and had little cherry tomatoes and red roasted red peppers and eggplant, and it was just all put together. Had this great vinaigrette on it. It was delicious.
okay, so I mentioned the last time that I made a mash that one of the things that you always want to do with mash is you want to heat up the cream and heat up the butter before you add it to the potatoes. So I'm going to be doing just that as I'm drain my potatoes. I'm going to slide this off, slide that on, which just has a splash of cream in it. those all out of the skillet and into my colander. And let's see. I'll just toss this in here right now because I need space. And it is oven safe, so that will work. I'm going to put this on a low heated back.
Nice.
Give my snap peas a bit of a toss.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting absolutely beautiful coloration on them. So I have a bit of cream in the pot in back. I need a bit of butter in there as well. So let me get a nice pat of butter and toss that in. And I'll turn the temperature up a little bit. Just to get that coated. Toss these around again. And these are just about done already. They do not take very long in that hot pan. Sprinkle some of the African pearl salt on those. Make sure that they're nicely seasoned up as well. And they look like they're done, so
Yay.
I'll come back in here and plate that up next to the steak.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Move this out of the way and get that back on the hob. Because as I mentioned, I roasted corn in the oven. So I'm going to give that corn a nice little
Ooh.
char in the same exact pan as the steak and the sugar snap peas. Let's see, where did I set my tongs? There I set my tongs. So that just goes straight into the same pan. Butter and cream are just about melted together. A little bit longer and we'll be good. The potatoes that came out have a lovely little flavor to them already. And will be an amazing mash. So let's return to my desk. This is what the meal looks like thus far. Plate's a bit messy, but oh man, it's good. Now then, I have the start of the salad. I have that compressed in, but that's not a Caesar salad yet. So let's fix that up and get the entire salad most of the way together. I'm going to not do it entirely quite yet, because if I do it entirely, then by the time everything else comes out, the greens will be a bit wilted. And that's not good. Salad when you have wilted greens. So what I'm going to do is I'll set this bowl right here right now. Pull out the romaine lettuce, which I've already trimmed up, getting rid of any bad spots in the leaf or sections of stock that get a bit too woody. And this I'm just going to run a knife through and decently sized ribbons. You can also just tear it up if you want a more rustic look, or you can slice it up even finer if you're going to make this for children, someone else like that. So all that sliced up goes straight into the little dish that I have here. Then Caesar salad, to me, always needs croutons. So let me grab the croutons that I have somewhere near me. I know I grabbed them. There we go. And I'll throw a handful of croutons on. Then before this will be completely plated up, I'll toss the Caesar salad dressing into this, toss the salad round in it, and then move that to its own bowl. So, as I mentioned, the corn, I'm getting a nice little sear on and a bit of blackening like it's on a grill. So there's, after I turn it the first time, let me let that sit for a moment. This cream and butter are now nice and hot. So there.
Yay!
And I'll need to find where I'm going to mash those. And for that, I'll just use a nice large bowl. And you just want to keep an eye on your corn because you don't want it getting too dark. But a nice bit of crust and sear on it is exactly what you're looking for. So there's the potatoes in my big bowl for the cream and butter mixture onto them. And let me get my potato masher. And I'll move to the desk and just do a quick mash of these. Let me clear room for this to be visible. Move the steak up to one side. So normally I rice my potatoes just for a bit of a finer texture. But when I was growing up, my mom always mashed the potatoes by hand, so I'm mashing them by hand for this meal. And heating up the cream and butter, just make sure that this has a much nicer texture in general. Then you always want to salt and season as you go, and you want to do it to taste. I gave the potatoes a taste already. Butter and cream, I know roughly how that tastes normal, so I'm going to add a little bit of salt, bit of little taste. I'll need a little bit more salt. And that should be good. So the mash is ready. I'll plate that up once I turn the corn again. Let me move the snap peas up into one corner. Move the steak over a little bit. And get a nice mound of potatoes off to one corner. So how does this look to you guys thus far?
It looks in the corner. I can't see it.
Let me maximize it then. That's that. There we go.
Oh yeah, that's good. Some good shit right there.
So I have a nice big mound of potatoes. That beautiful, beautiful strip steak. Let me just clear off my desk and work surface a bit so I'll have more room. Because that is not everything from the feast quite yet. Because the corn is almost ready to come out. The crumble, let me take a peek ahead. Needs just a little bit longer, but that's looking good. As with anything when it's baking, it depends on how accurate your oven temperature is. If you have a good, accurate oven, then the cook times will be fairly spot on. If you have an oven that runs a little bit cold, which is what I think mine does, it takes some extra time.
God, all I can think right now is how eerily your fingers resemble mine. It's freaky.
I have very meaty hands with fingers that look like they've been horrendously broken, despite them, for the most part, never having been broken. Let me flip this down. That way you get a bit of a better view of the good stuff here. So, skin on mashed potatoes. The sugar snap peas, which being cooked in the pan after that beef, have a nice meaty taste to them as well. And that little bit of char on them, absolutely delicious. And then, of course, the star, this absolutely beautiful steak. Let's see, how's the corn doing? The corn looks like it's ready to come out. So,
What you gonna do with that corn? There's no more plate.
I'll just lay it across the bean or the snap peas like that. And then I need a new bowl. For that salad. Let me check on that crumble again. Let's see. Almost there. Just needs a few moments longer for the crumble. But yeah, so this is straight out of my childhood, each of the components of this. Like I said, the making it all at once is a bit extreme and deliciously so. But each of these things was something that I grew up with.
Right on.
Corn either, like I said, boiled or roasted or grilled. This one's kind of roasted and then quasi-grilled because it was thrown into a nice hot cast iron, giving some of the same effect. Snap peas that have just been real simply done. And the steak is done differently than a lot of the time when I was growing up. In order to make it easier and faster, my mom would either grill the steak or she would broil the steak. But today, I just did a real simple, delicious pan sear. Let me get a knife for when that's ready. And I'll need a salad fork for my salad, of course. I'll just use my big ass truce fork for my primary fork. And I'll need a spoon. So what do you guys think? This all fairly simple to make?
Mm-hmm.
I would be inclined to agree.
Any of this remind you of your own childhood and your own family's special meals?
Yeah, it was everything we never had.
Ouch.
Delahaye was a Poe Canadian. A Poe Canadian boy.
Except for those lovely times when we got to visit Grandma and Grandpa. They spoiled us rotten with food and treats and whatnot.
Let me stick a nice big pad of butter into the potatoes.
Ooh, fancy.
You always need a nice big pad of butter in your potatoes, don't you?
Yep.
Look at the way he spreads it.
And I'm just gonna.
Hey, Sanguine. I see a bottle of Worcestershire over there. Did you put Worcestershire on this steak?
I put it in the Caesar salad.
Nice.
Wait, did you get the apple crumble out?
The apple crumble is just finishing up. I'm giving it a couple moments longer
Okay.
because you want a nice, crisp top, which is
Oh yeah. Okay.
why apple crumble is also sometimes called apple crisp.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Now,
I just
Now-
was making sure I didn't miss it.
I have a question, and maybe I'm not the only one, but what the heck is going on with your shoes, Sanguine?
What?
What, you have a problem with the Monkey King slippers?
Yeah.
I can just-
I like it.
Here, let me slide this up so I'm not putting the slipper over top of the food. But you have a problem with Monkey King?
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Nice.
Monkey King always
I could just barely see it through like the top of the thing, and I'm like, he's got some funky ass shoes there.
Yep, and I'm surprised that no one's mentioned the apron that I'm using. Here, let me just...
Well, I can barely see it.
I'll go
I'm
to
surprised
this
view.
view, and I will zoom out so that you all can see my glorious apron.
Nice.
Nice.
Most honorable.
And yeah, Monkey King slippers. That's what's up with my shoes.
I just assumed they were brightly colored tennis shoes.
I just
Nope.
they're
They
So
have eyes
Sang-
that are looking at you from the top.
So Sanguine, the steak, is this in its final form, or are you gonna do some nice cutting on the bias there?
The steak is effectively in its final form. As you cut the steak, of course, you always want to make sure that your last cut of any piece of meat is against the grain. And I say the last cut because early on you'll have a number of cuts that aren't against the grain, but the last one always should. It makes it much more tender. And here's the apple crumble,
Yay!
fresh out of the oven. You can tell that that's a nice golden brown. Especially here, let me grab some oats out, and I'll hold the oats, which started out that color.
Yep.
Go to that color.
That looks beautiful.
And this,
Now
of course, can be topped up a la mode.
So, are these orchard apples or just from the market?
These are just standard Granny Smith from a grocery store.
Do you have any orchards out where you are?
I'm sure I have a couple, but I didn't have any that I could readily go to. Though there is a farmer's market that I need to run out to, and I'm going to not this week, but next week. And I just need to re-whisk my dressing.
Dude, you got to get you some of those fresh apples. They're starting to come into season now.
Yeah.
I'm here in New England. New England is huge on apple orchards.
So I'm just quickly re-whisking the dressing to make sure that it's nice and incorporated. Due to the egg and the mustard, this dressing doesn't separate as much as most others. But the garlic does kind of fall to the bottom of the dressing.
Makes sense.
So when you whisk it, it's more to get the garlic back up into the dressing and less so to get the oil and vinegar to mix. And
Yeah, because the egg would act as an emulsifier.
exactly, as does the mustard. So you have two really good emulsifiers, which
And
allow
you have to stir the garlic back in because it's the heaviest thing, and heavy things tend to go to the bottom.
Yep. And then this Caesar salad needs one last thing before it's done. Dropping everything again.
Little floor spice makes everything nice.
I have to keep you guys on your toes.
I gotta be right back. My phone's about to die.
So, should I wait for her to show the last step of this, or just say screw it and
Up to you.
show everyone else?
Well, I would say that it's Kara's fault for not charging her phone earlier.
We're all gonna see it regardless whether you wait for her or not. Am I right?
Yep.
So it's up to you, man.
Let's see, I'm getting fairly hungry, so I'll give her until I finish opening up this block of cheese to come back.
Sounds fair.
Back. Fantastic. If not, then you all get to see me grate the Parmesan onto this salad fresh.
Mm.
And then I'll, of course, toss that in, get it incorporated, and then I'll plate it up. So there's the salad thus far with the croutons and the dressing. Now I have a nice hunk of Parmesan that I'm just going to start grating straight into this salad. And this is, of course, one of the steps that you can decide how much cheese you want. You can add more than I do. You can add less than I do. Everything's to taste. So there's that.
I have a question for you, Sanguine.
Go ahead.
When you get down to the end of a block of cheddar that you're grating, what do you do with it?
If it's the end of a block of Parmesan, then that's really good to throw into a jarred sauce. Really livens up the sauce again as you're heating it up. If it's the end block of cheddar, doesn't really get a rind for the most, or at least you can get cheddar that has rind. But if you're in a normal store, normally you don't end up with the rind of cheddar. You can get the rind on blue cheese, which can also be used to make a sauce. You can get rinds of a lot of different types of cheese, and most of them, that rind has a hell of a lot of flavor, It's just a texture issue that makes it not appealing.
Mm.
So, throwing it into a sauce, throwing it into a mixture of some sort just to add more flavor tends to be one of the best ways of using it.
Hmm.
And I just remembered that this apple crumble just came out of the oven, so touching it with my hand twice was probably not a good idea.
I mean, it depends on your hands.
Well, mine seems to have come out without any issue.
I mean, if you got hands well experienced with the heat, it's not so bad.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
call it kicking.
Mm.
Yeah, that's right, Del Hayes. You do food prep or something related, right?
Something related.
Yeah. So you have the asbestos hands too.
So,
Well, I mean, my hands don't leave you itchy when they touch you, but they're pretty durable against heat. Yeah.
they are dangerous to inhale powder of, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, on the fair side, that is kind of like asbestos. If you inhale the powder, it's dangerous, but
That is one of the nice things about working in food prep, though, is that your hands become like oven mitts themselves.
Mm-hmm.
so this is the entire feast assembled on one plate. The corn will, of course, be brushed with butter as I eat it.
Naturally.
Snap peas are good to go as they are. The steak already has a nice shine from the just tallow that rendered out of the beef. But if you want to increase the shine a little bit, you just rub it with some butter. The salad is absolutely beautiful. And one thing to mention about the salad is if you like really crunchy croutons, add them after you've mixed up the salad with the dressing. If you're like me and you like them just soak up the dressing a lot, add them into the romaine before you mix in the dressing.
Mm.
They just sop up that amazing homemade Caesar salad dressing, really giving a fantastic flavor to it.
Mm.
And I've already cut into the steak. I've already been chomping on everything on this plate with the exception of the corn thus far. I should probably show the apple crumble a little bit, shouldn't I?
Might as well.
Yeah.
So, let me actually use the spoon. So you have that nice crust
Mm-hmm.
on top, which just absolutely crumbles apart deliciously. Like the most insanely flaky pie crust that you can imagine. Then, oh, 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 oh. Oh.
Yeah,
You-
it doesn't work as well with the mouth for
It's
kitchen.
it's not often that you can hear a mistake in action.
Well, I mean, at least every second Sunday night on Minute to the Zoo.
Oh,
You clearly haven't watched enough of the Magabon morsels. It's becoming a bit of a routine of, and make sure that you let this come down to temperature where it won't burn you 2 seconds later. As I ignore the advice that I just gave everyone. But you have the amazing freshness and acidity from the lemon juice and zest. You have the normal tartness of green apples. this fantastic crumbly top with the flavors of roasted oat and cinnamon. You have that soft texture of roasted or baked apples with that nice crunchy crust. It's an absolutely fantastic adventure of textures and tastes that all just blend together beautifully. Ah, there's a reason why this is one of my favorite desserts, even to this day.
You know what you need, Sanguine? You need one of those lazy Susans, so that way you can put it on, rotate it, and get some nice B-roll of the apple crisp as it's rotating.
Set up a camera for the sexies, effectively.
Yes.
Oh, 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 oh. Ooh. Ooh. Absolutely delicious. To the point where I'm just routinely burning my mouth because I don't want to not eat it.
I actually had a similar thing the other day. I had never tried Popeye's chicken before, and I got it like straight out of the thing, and it was so delicious. I took a bite, top of my mouth burned. I kept eating.
Mm-hmm. So, any questions or comments about the meal, how I did something, why I did something, anything like that? Because part of the reason why I have the guests on to talk to me is also they can ask questions in real time when in my videos I might gloss over something that everyone's wanting to know and answer.
Let's see. Kara says it looks delicious. Mr. Adams says that Popeyes is not good chicken. Well, if you live in New Hampshire where there's only KFC, yes, it is good chicken.
He also said ew before that Popeye's comment, so I'm going to question his taste.
I think he's just talking about Popeyes.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
He is impressed by the cut of meat, though.
And
It's true, it's good. Can you show us the inside? What's the cut on it like? Give us a close up.
Unfortunately, a little bit more well done because I got distracted. But it is a nice rare because it's still pink. Oh, not rare, medium because it's still pink.
Yeah.
But I was hoping to go for medium rare. Just got distracted with everything else. So a little bit more well done than I wanted.
You know what you gotta try for a future video is you gotta try some of that hanger steak. Or the butcher steak, I think.
I've done hanger steak many times. I've done an amazing flank steak recipe, which reminds me, the next series that I'm going to start up is going to be starting Sanguine. And Eve's here, so let me add Eve into the mix.
Oh,
Hello, Hi.
Hi, Eve.
I know I'm really late, but let's go stop it for a minute. It all looks delicious.
Hey, you showed up at the perfect time. The food's ready.
Awesome.
nice
So-
shirt.
Thank you. It's just $3 at Walmart. It was great.
Very
Bunch
nice.
of smells, I'm sold.
I got it on the clearance rack. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cute. For $3, I'll give it a try. Oh my god, it fits well. It looks good on me. All right,
There you go.
good $3.
So the next series will be what I'm dubbing Starting Sanguine, which is going to be kind of a... This was already a trip down memory lane because this is going back to comfort foods. starting Sanguine, I'm going to the best of my ability, take you through chronological order of some of the dishes that I started making. From the very first thing that I helped make, which is a popover that my brother and myself did for our mother on Mother's Day one year. Then jumping ahead to when I actually started cooking myself, the first couple dishes that I remember making, and then a couple of my now mainstay dishes. It won't include the hangover loaf quite yet. That'll be in another series, which I'm just going to call Bullish Baking. But it will include my fajita recipe and a number of other special recipes that I make. It should be a lot of fun. Trying to remember how I made things when I don't make recipes. Or rather, I don't measure anything and I don't write anything down.
Man, I'm just thinking that I bet you if you used like some stock inside the pan, and you could make a nice gravy for those potatoes.
Oh yeah, I've done that many times. But even just right now without the gravy, the potatoes have a fantastic flavor to them because they still have the skins. I made sure that the water that I used was nicely seasoned. And the heavy cream that I used, whenever you're making mashed potatoes, ignore everyone that says use milk or light cream or half and half. No, they're fucking liars. Use heavy cream. Heavy cream every single time. The flavor that you get out of that is absolutely amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
And like I said, you always want to heat up your cream and heat up your butter before you add them into the potatoes, because it massively improves the texture of the mashed potato afterwards. So, Eve, any questions about what's on the plate since you joined in late?
I see yummy, and vegetables.
Accurate. Accurate, and accurate.
Well, I see the steak.
Sorry, get me.
If you want to give like your usual summary of how you do things.
So,
Sorry, hang on.
I think Eve's dogs found the food.
No, they found someone outside making noise, and they're just like, "Oh, there's a person outside the house. They exist. I have to bark." Nose is itching.
so the steak was done very much in the previous series manner, the Simple is Sexy series, where it was just salt, and this time I allowed my guests on here and our audience to select what type of salt they wanted me to use this time round. And they
What type of
chose
salt was it?
the African sphere salt,
Never heard of that.
or African pearl salt is another name for it. Here, let me show it off again, because that one is one of the weirdest salts that I have, just because of how it looks. So, let me show a more standard salt first. This one's still a weird one, but it has standard salt crystal look to it. That is a Salzburg berg salt. It's weird in the composition, which is why every grain looks different. It has an irregular composition that changes from grain to grain. Whereas the African pearl salt, here, let me actually throw it in my truce spoon here that'll be easier for you guys to see. Rather than having a salt crystal type shape, it's just these little white pearls.
Do you know what goes into their formation?
It's the way that the salt is extracted. So the Salzburg berg salt is a rock salt. It's mined. Whoops. I dropped that on top of everything. So it has a fairly standard salt structure due to that, just normal salt crystal. The African sphere salt or pearl salt ends up being very slowly extracted from salt water that keeps on ebbing in and flowing back out and ebbing in and flowing back out. So it ends up with this river rock type texture to it.
So it's almost like it's being formed and tumbled at the same time.
Yep. And then they get it from these deposits where it ends up falling out of solution and ending up staying. So it has a very weird structure to it because of that smoothing from the tumbling and the just water constantly moving around it. Whereas, like I said, Salzburg berg salts is a mined salt. It's a rock salt. Himalayan, same thing. And then here, I have my normal salt, not my normal salt, but the salt that I've used the most in my videos, which is the Maldon smoked sea salt that likes to come straight in. Let me turn that away so that it isn't as bright. Which again has kind of a jagged structure to it. And most of my salts have that jagged structure. The African sphere is one of the exceptions to that rule. So it makes it rather interesting to work with. But it has a very clean taste and works as a cooking salt, works as a finishing salt. No problems at any point.
Mm.
And that's something to remember when talking about salts. A lot of people think salt is salt is salt is salt. But different salts should be used at different points in the preparation and serving. So you have some salts that are really good prep salts and cooking salts. So you'll put it onto the meat right before it cooks, and it gives an absolutely amazing flavor. You have other salts which they get completely washed out if you do that. So you want to use them as a finishing salt. You have other salts that there's a couple types of salts that work amazingly in desserts, but don't work as well in savories. You have other salts that work really well in pickling applications, but not really well in standard cooking applications.
Yeah, I was always under the impression that salt was mostly about shape more than anything else. Like kosher salt is good for like seasoning, and pickling salt is basically just regular salt but highly crushed down to
Actually,
a fine powder.
Pickling salt is an entirely different type of salt. It isn't a sodium chloride.
Really?
Yeah, pickling salt is I want to say it's potassium. Let me quickly
Nerds.
I think it's a potassium salt.
Eve's getting bored. I think that somebody should fight somebody else.
So pickling salt is, let's see. Oh no, I'm thinking, so there's pickling salt, which is still a potassium chloride. Then there's curing salt is the one that I'm thinking.
Ah,
No, I was just calling y'all nerds because you start talking about like, no, it's not actually a sodium chloride. I'm like, oh my god, when you start saying sodium chloride, you've crossed into nerddom.
Well, you have to differentiate between a sodium salt versus a non-sodium salt because curing salt is a sodium nitrate salt
Mm-hmm.
rather than a normal salt. And some curing salts are saltpeter, which is potassium nitrate. That's the one that I was thinking of. Not all salts are the same. And for example, the pink Himalayan, the reason why pink Himalayan is the color it is because of the, I suppose you could call them contaminants within the salt. Because pink Himalayan has a fair bit of iron 3 oxide, whereas if you're looking at a black Hawaiian, then that's iron 4. If you're looking at a black French, if I remember correctly, then that has a lot of sulfur, which gives it its black color. So it has also kind of an eggy smell to it.
I don't think I'd like that.
Oh, you'd be surprised. It is absolutely delicious. It works beautifully as both a cooking salt and a finishing salt. So you can throw it on to a piece of meat before you start searing it off, and it gives this really interesting and fantastic flavor to it. Or you can throw it on after you've cooked your meat, and it is absolutely delicious. So, any additional questions about food or anything like that? Or shall we call this the end of Sanguine Savoury Streams number 2?
All I see in the chat is Eve called us nerds again. So
Yeah,
that's about
I am a
it.
nerd.
Is she wrong?
You want to fight about it, Eve?
Truth as a defense, I suppose.
How about instead of a fight, Eve, we go for a drink off?
Oh. Wow, that's just mean, bruh. Oh.
Inside reference that I don't get.
Sanguine would destroy her in a drinking contest, I believe. That's
Oh,
my
okay.
opinion.
I have an absolutely monstrous tolerance
I gotchas.
to the point where when Eve, Skeptalk, Adamar, also known as Mr. Adam, Inquisitor, and myself went to MythCon last year, I brought not only my hangover loaf, but my box of booze. And while there, Adam, Inquisitor, and I started drinking. They were not quite one for oneing, bit less than that, probably more in the realm of like 1.5 or 1 to 2. So for every drink that I mix them, I mix myself at least one, normally 2 or 1.5. I was the sober one at the end of the night.
Oof.
Isn't that right, Eve?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I was sober, but
You also weren't drinking.
exactly. No, but Sanguine has an ungodly high alcohol tolerance. The problem is, I think we determined that there was the one time that you got really super drunk was you were like a couple of drinks away from like alcohol, bad alcohol poisoning, and
Well,
even though you weren't feeling it.
the thing was, I've been drunk twice in my life, and Skeptalk looked up the LD50 of alcohol, and I was about at the LD50 of alcohol.
Yeah, which
For those of you who don't know what an LD50 is, LD50 is the amount of alcohol, or the amount of any substance, because you can do an LD50 for anything, at which 50% of the population's dead.
Yep. So Sanguine, I mean, yeah, he could have almost killed himself there.
Yeah, the first time that I was ever drunk, I had over 50-some drinks in about an hour and a half.
Oof.
So, absolutely monstrous tolerance. Which is why challenging someone to a drinking competition is always
pretty-
funny and dangerous. At least if they accept.
Yeah.
So, wasn't sure if you heard Eve. I asked her, are there any additional questions, or shall I call this stream to an end?
My question is, how long does it take me to get to your house so I can share in this dinner? Because literally all I've got right now to eat is just a Tostino's pizza. So
How long was your drive to MythCon?
about 10 hours.
Oof.
It is about comparable, I believe, to drive
Awesome.
to me.
Awesome.
Maybe an hour and a half more.
So with stops, I'll be there in time for breakfast in the morning.
Yep.
Perfect.
You can
All right,
have
well-
his leftovers. If there are any.
If there are any.
Breakfast will most likely be some smoked salmon on a nicely toasted bagel with some lemon juice, capers, a little bit of
He's already sitting there thinking, hurry up and end so I can get in the
sour
car.
cream, and that's going to be done up nicely. Of course, buttered bagel. I might include something else, but that's probably going to be my breakfast. And yes, Adam, we do absolutely need another Minions meetup.
Mm-hmm.
So, shall we call it an end?
Yep, because I need to get going.
Yeah, I need to go
Okay.
do stuff.
I need to. Okay, yeah, I don't have anything.
In that case, I shall leave everyone off with my standard for my cooking videos. Try new things. Try even just one or two ingredients. Try a different version of them. If you've always used normal table salt, find a different type of salt. They're all over the place now. You can find pink Himalayan, you can find black Himalayan, you can find red Lele, you can find smoked salts, infused salts, various other types of salt. Absolutely fantastic way of including something new to your meal.
Oh,
That
I got
is
your salt.
Still
I got your
convenient.
You know, if you hold out for another 52 seconds, you can make this stream 2 hours long exactly.
Try
Just saying.
try new ingredients and just enjoy food, enjoy life, have a good go of it. Have fun, cook, make new things, have good meals. And with that, have a good one all.
Night, everyone.
Night.